Managing expenses is important in good times, but more even critical in bad times. Everybody goes through an unfortunate situation where they can lose their jobs, where they go through a global pandemic like we are right now. But in all of that, tough times do test our mental and physical wellness, but also our finances. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ginger, the founder of Ginger the Voice. We are a communications company that seeks to give hope, courage, and enlightenment. We do this through various platforms such as speaking, singing, and posting talk shows. So tonight we're talking all things money. We have as our guest Aviloshani Nai, and I always get the pronunciation of your name wrong, Val. That's why I just stick to Val.
Is Ginger, hi everybody, but Ginger, I think you're the only person that calls me Val. It's normally shortened to Velo or Velosh, but you're the only person that calls me Val, which is quite unique, so thank you.
All right, I suppose I want you to remember me.
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
Val, we're so excited to have you tonight, especially at a point of what we're going through as a nation, I suppose as the entire world, a global pandemic where we find ourselves with almost nothing, in terms of money. We are under pressure. We find ourselves having to budget. We find ourselves having to to look at life differently and to cutting down our expenses, But I want to ask you, first of all, what inspired you? I know that you're an author of a nice book called Money Smart. There it is, as you can see. I know that you're an author of Money Smart. And what I want to understand from you is what inspired you to actually write this book?
So, yes, good evening to all the viewers, I should say. It's a pleasure, firstly, and an honor to be with you tonight and to share some insights with you during this difficult time, as Ginger has rightfully positioned. In terms of who I am I've been working in the finance field for many years. Finance and procurement is my specialist field. I also lecture in procurement. So I understand costs and finance at a very strategic level, if I can put it that way. And my inspiration came from having, requests from people, individuals, requesting help either with their debts or their bonds, or how do they, get on top of their finances, consolidation, getting loans from banks, how does it work? People, the average person doesn't really understand these kind of concepts. Fortunately for me, I have been in finance, so I kind of understand all of the concepts and understand how things work. I also spent 10 years in the banking industry, of course, in my field, so I understand the banking products as well. And having the overview of the difference between what you borrow and what you invest is important in terms of, as an individual, what are your equities and what do you owe to individuals. So that's kind of where I came from. And I realized that, people actually do not understand. We get our salary and we think, wow, it's a fabulous amount of money and I'm going to spend it on ABC. And, 2 days or 3 days later, we realize that we don't necessarily have that vast amount of money that we thought of initially. And therefore, that was what inspired me to write the book. And the book is really about personal foundational finance, which means it will teach you about things like buying a car, buying a home, how to budget. There's a chapter on shopping principles for us ladies and for individuals that tend to shop rather than save, etc. So I think it's about getting the balance right. And the book also teaches you about goals, how to set in place the goals for your own aspirations and your own dreams, and how to deal with your own dreams and your aspirations and gear yourself towards the dreams and aspirations.
I think I like the part that you're talking about, talking about your own goals, setting your own goals, and also cutting down on expenses. How we do that, we do know that, and one of our key focus on the budget review in 2021 is to see how South Africa is actually stabilizing in terms of cutting on debt, so that we don't enter a debt trap if we haven't already entered it. If we do have to speak the truth online, but and that keeping to a stable debt, or to a stable financial situation, there's a lot of reliance on cutting on your spending. What
Yes.
I want to understand from you is, so is that what budget is all about? What is it to budget?
So let me start off by saying that we won't get to the government debt because that's a topic for another day.
Another
That's
day.
a full hour's discussion,
Yes.
essentially. So we won't get into that. But personally, yes, that's what a budget is about. The budget comprises a couple of elements. The first one is, what do you want to do with your money to be able to achieve your goals? Your
Mm.
goal might be traveling, might be a new house, might be a new car, might be investments, and so forth. So the budget allows you to manage and control and monitor. Most importantly, is to monitor your expenses on a day-to-day basis, or a weekly basis, or a monthly basis. And a budget basically is the creation of where you're going to actually spend your money.
Okay.
And as we know, Ginger, a lot of us these days, what we tend to do is live above our income levels. So
Mm.
literally, a budget teaches you that principle to say, live within your means, not beyond your means. Ensure that you have your expenses are below your income, and also to try and invest, of course, or save a portion of your income, because that's what allows you to become financially independent. It allows you to achieve your goals. It allows you to get married, for example. It allows you to plan your life out further.
Okay.
So
So
then
you're saying that we need to live within our means, and but the budgeting helps us with that. But now, so what should one consider when they're budgeting?
you would consider all of your income, of course, as the starting point. Is definitely the starting point. Of course, if you earning a certain amount of money, your house then should be aligned with your income, so that your standard of living does not exceed your income level. And a lot of us fall into that trap, and we fall into the debt trap because the
Mm.
standard of living becomes higher than what our income level is.
Mm.
So we should consider definitely our rent. Most, the higher debt that we pay off on a monthly basis is usually your rent or your bond and your car. So
Yes.
the bond and the car. So those three need to align to your income. And of course, if you have a partner and you have two incomes in a household, that does help. But we find today, Ginger, that there's a lot of single parents, single mums, and single dads. And two incomes are obviously better than one. But if you have one income, then you should still plan those larger expenses to be within your income level. And as you grow, as your income grows, and as you save, you can start off, and I detail that in my book. Start off by saving small, pay off your smallest debt, and use that money, transfer that money into some sort of savings. What you
Mhm.
then say to the universe is, you saying to the universe, I actually value myself. I am not paying all of my income towards debt. I value myself, and therefore I'm putting some money away for this wonderful person, myself. And when you start doing that, the universe works with you. And so you change the energy around as well. So
And
it's,
just to say something quickly there, I think when
yes,
you're talking about that, Robert Kiyosaki talks about paying yourself first. And I suppose saving could be a way of paying yourself first. Like you're saying that you're valuing yourself when you save and invest. There's a comment right here by Cesar. He's saying that that debt trap, banks also don't help us by offering crazy credit card limits.
that is so true, because what actually happens is, not only banks, CISA, I would say that your banks and any account that you open, like a clothing account, the Woolies
Mm,
account, and
mm,
just to name but one, but I won't name any because there's a multitude of accounts. The
mm,
account is, the limit is not the amount that you should consider when considering your budget. You should
mm,
consider how much you can afford towards that account. Let's say, for example, we open accounts for our house renovations, things that add value, and we should consider buying or spending on items that add value to our equity, as we call it. And so those accounts must add value, firstly. Secondly, the limit is not a target. It is not a
okay.
target. It is just a gauge as from the credit rating what you're
Mm.
eligible for, but it is
Mm.
not a target. Please do not see it as a target. Base your budget on what you can afford and therefore spend only that particular amount, because then your repayment process becomes easier. Then your savings amount becomes easier, and you paying yourself, to Ginger's point, paying yourself, Ginger, is the Babylonian principle. And paying yourself means that you're investing in yourself. The only way to invest in yourself is to save or to invest or to create more wealth for yourself.
Okay.
Accounts
So
and,
increasing your income.
increasing your income, rapidly growing your income. And that's what I talk about in my book. That's the principle that I speak throughout my book, which is the theme, which
Mm.
says that we need to build and grow ourselves as individuals financially. And
Mm.
you cannot necessarily do that with only debt. All the
Mm.
clothing, the furniture, all of the things that we spend on, they are necessities. I speak about necessities and luxuries. What are necessities and what are luxuries? So we have to define them. Each one of us has to define what is a necessity and what is a luxury.
Okay, there's a viewer's question here. Some of them want to remain anonymous. If you do want to remain anonymous, please do remember that you can send to me on Facebook, Ginger the Voice or Ginger GTV. You can send me a message so that I can read it out and I will keep your name anonymous. So there's an anonymous viewer here, and he's saying, how do I budget for one-time expenses? For example, anniversary, a birthday event.
So a birthday event is not going to be a one-time event. It's going to be annually, right? And we
Mm.
have a lot of family members, usually, and friends, and so forth. But my take on birthdays as unforeseen events should be based on your budget. So within your budget, and in my book as well, I speak about the birthdays and presents and gifts and things of that are unforeseen. And basically, you must budget for those items within your budget if you are going to buy a gift. A very good story, a very good friend of mine has recently met some very fancy friends, and that actually spend a lot of money on her gifts. And she was saying to me that she may not be spending time with them anymore simply because their birthdays are coming up and she cannot afford the same value of gifts. But a gift
Mm.
is not based on value. Rightfully so, it should be based on the gift. And I made some suggestions, like a book, for example, a scarf, inexpensive type of gifts that are meaningful, that the person would utilize as well. So your budget, you need to budget if you are planning to spend on birthday gifts. Definitely, those are unforeseen expenses. Other unforeseen expenses are, things that break down. Your fridge breaks down, like me, for
Yes.
example.
Mm-hmm.
Washing machine breaks down, those kind of, you need to create a line item called unforeseen expenses, and that covers breakdowns that were in equipment, or unforeseen expenses, unforeseen purchases that you need to buy, birthdays and gifts and so forth. Because what tends to happen, Ginger, is if you create a budget and you
Yes.
don't take into account the smaller expenses, over the month, you'll find that the smaller expenses tend to exceed those that you've already budgeted for. And
Absolutely.
and you would lose kind of faith in the budgeting process. So
Mm.
it's important to budget for every expense. What I also suggest in my book is that you also take down all of your expenses that you've done, that your credit card expenses, to Cisa's earlier point, your credit card expenses. Take your statement and list those expenses so that they become either your grocery expenses, they become your clothing expenses, your food expenses. If you don't list them, you won't know what they are, right? So you
I
have
think
to list.
I must agree with you, Val, when you talk about how those small expenses that we don't take care of or that we overlook become bigger. You find that those little airtimes that you keep on buying, 12 rands, if you're Vodacom, 29 rands, when you actually look at the end of the month, you've
Yes.
spent way above 1,000 rands just on airtime. And because it's 12 rands, 29 rands, you did not even put it in your budget. You thought, it's little money. But as time goes by, it adds up. So what I want to also understand, what is the use of budgeting? I know it's important, but what are the uses? Maybe you can give us three tips of the uses of a budget.
So the uses of the budget is to keep tab, mainly and most importantly, is to keep tab on your spending. So if you are now keeping tabs on a monthly basis or even a weekly basis, or if you choose to start off on a monthly basis, because let's face it, most of us don't want to recognize where we spend our money. So at the end of the month, if you start listing your expenses on a budget, and you haven't done this before, it is quite a shocking experience for most of us, because those little expenses that we don't cater for,
Yep.
now suddenly we can see exactly where we are spending.
Mm.
So that is the first purpose of the budget. The second purpose is to align your income with your expenses, and so that you don't go into debts. Once you go into debt, it's debt consolidation, and you'll have to be dealing with debts for the rest of your life. And once I believe that once a person reaches a certain level and you've crossed that level, then you definitely need financial help. So let's not get into the situation where we need debt consolidation or financial institutions to pull us out. Let's rather look at how we as individuals can manage our debt. So the second purpose of the budget is to align the income to the spending. The third purpose of the budget is for the goals. So once we've aligned our income, we've brought our income and our expenses in alignment, we can now see which are our large debts and which are our small debts. As mentioned, we try and pay off our smaller debts first, and we move those monies into savings.
So
And
this
as
paying off the smaller debts is called the snowball effect, if I'm correct.
yes,
Okay.
yes, because if and you transforming that snowball effect from an effect of debt to an effect of savings and investment for yourself, and in the long term, you're going to move across from a debt portfolio to actually a very good investment portfolio. So that is the third purpose of the budget, and over time, what it also does on a spiritual level, what you won't see necessarily in the budget tool itself, but you'll realize where the universe can guide you, and where you can guide yourself in terms of your own life path, and in terms of your destiny, in terms of the money at your disposal. And you will find that the universe works with you to grant you the things that you desire, because you'll probably have a thought, an afterthought about an expense, and you would say to yourself, okay, well, this is what I can do here, this is how I can maneuver things so that I can get more out of my money.
Okay.
So
We've
there's
got
also
here.
that, sorry, there's also that synergistic effect, which
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily come through on the budget itself that you create, but that there's a long-term synergistic effect that people find with budgeting.
Okay. We've got
Thank you.
a comment here from a viewer, Taryn Shauna Victor. Hello, Taryn. She's saying, hello, Veloshni and Ginger. I never knew how much I spend on banking fees and have now included that in my budget. Veloshni, how could I cut down banking fees?
Hi, Taryn. Good evening, and thank you for saying hello to Ginger and I. So there's very simple methods to cut down on your banking fees as you evolve in terms of your banking package with your banking institution. You then evolve into different packages called, and they're labeled in terms of your income and in terms of your portfolio. As you fall into one portfolio, you can negotiate set banking fees with your banker based on the package that you're on. So let me put it simply, like on a cellular phone package, you might have a cellular phone bundle that comes with a certain amount of data and a certain amount of voice. Similarly, the banking fee structures are based on packages. So you need to have the conversation with your bank to say, here's my income, here's my expenses, this is my value that I'm bringing to your institution. What package level am I on, and how can I evolve at a different level, and how can I consolidate my banking fees? Usually the banks would charge you a monthly fee based on a package instead of paying per transaction fees. And
I
banks,
suppose, Veloshni, the monthly fee works out cheaper than per transaction fee.
yes, if you look at the per transaction fees just on ATMs, for example, you'd find that you could be paying on ATM withdrawals, you can be paying something like from between 8 Rand to 30 Rand, depending on where you withdraw those particular the cash. Whereas if you have set banking charges, you'll find that those fees reduce, and then you might pay a monthly service fee for servicing the account instead of a per transaction fee. So you have to weigh the volume of transactions that you do. If you do 50 transactions, obviously the package works well. If you do maybe 5 transactions, you may have to look at, the cost. If it's 5 transactions at 5 Rand each, that's going to be 25 Rand versus, monthly cost of 50 Rand. You'll have to weigh which one works best for you. But please speak to your bank. Throughout my book, I talk about having access to a bank and the value that brings into your financial portfolio. And the reason is, we tend to see banks as, alienated from us as personal individuals. And that is not the case. The banks have various packages that they can offer. Even to Cisa's question on, charges and his credit limit, he can reduce his credit limit. That's up to him. The choices that you make on your banking transactions can be dealt with your bank, and with a card division, for example, you can reduce your credit limit. And I know a few people who have lost control of their credit cards, for example, because of the limit. Please speak to your bank.
And I guess, Veloshni, it's very important for us to look at our bank statements. And some of us don't even go through our bank statements. We just see that the amount of money that's in there, and that's it. It's over. We just continue with life. It brings out a healthy relationship with our money if we continuously check, and also continuously check what packages are there, like you're saying, in the banks, and get the best out of it. So consultation is quite important. There's another viewer's question. Thank you, Taryn, for that question. There's a viewer's question. She's saying, how can I reduce my debt quickly? So people, I guess, because they have experienced job losses because of the global pandemic, they are now rushing to pay their debts, at least to be safe when it comes to debts, and see other things as time goes by. So how can this person she says, how can I reduce my debt quickly?
So it would depend, Ginger. There's no right or wrong way in terms of paying it off quickly. Your reason for paying it off quickly, should be well established. So let's take a car. Let's say you've lost your job, and you actually are in the market. You're looking for another job, and you're pretty sure that you're going to get a job quite soon. What does that mean? Will you need your car? If you have to, for example, sell your car, in this case, you wouldn't have a car. So in that example, you would then negotiate with your bank and say, that the banks would give you a 3-month holiday, which they were doing last year. They may, if you approach, they will make an arrangement, because it doesn't help them to repossess the car either. Secondly, Ginger, if you have a clothing account, let's take any one of the clothing retail stores. If you have a clothing account, and let's say you've spent 10,000 Rand, for example. Okay, that's a bit high on clothing at any given point in time, but let's say you spent 10,000 Rand. What is the purpose of you now paying off the 10,000 Rand when you can pay it off in the installments? Couldn't you utilize that cash in an investment that would grant you some interest, which you could utilize towards paying the clothing account?
Absolutely.
So it depends on the nature of the debt. If you really want to get out of debt, you have to establish the reasons why. If you're not planning to go into the job market again, or it's difficult to find jobs, which I totally understand, then I would suggest paying off your smaller debts quickly, so that you have more money to pay off those larger debts. And you should
the snowball effect that we spoke about earlier on.
The snowball effect. Also of importance, Ginger, is that if you have the debt on the one side, and you've got capital or investments, should you take your investments to pay off your debt? Not necessarily. You have to ascertain what is the bigger plan. It's always about the bigger plan, where you want to go to, how you want to manage yourself, and where this individual, whom I call I, wants to be in the next few months, in the next 6 months, in the next 12 months. Will the job situation improve over the next 6 or 12 months for myself? And, how can I manage that? Let's say you pay all of your debt and you have no investments or no capital left over, where does that leave you as well?
Okay, we've got a question again from our viewer, Nonhlanhla Nkosi. She's saying that this is powerful. Is it possible to pay a bond in 5 years or less than 20 years?
So you would have to do the calculations. It would depend on the bond amount and the bond value. Usually, in the first 4 or 5, maybe about the first 5 years, you are simply paying off the interest on your bond, because that interest is capitalized over a 20-year period. So the question is, in the first 5 years, you're going to be paying off the interest. You're touching lightly onto the capital amount. And that's the issue with the bond. That's why we tend to have these bonds for long periods of time. And obviously, if you could afford it, you would have paid cash upfront. But there's an affordability issue as well. If you do pay more than the installment, the additional portion goes towards the capital amount. And once you start reducing the capital amount, your monthly interest reduces as well. So there's a twofold effect by paying off the additional amount, so that you reduce the interest over time that you are paying. And the banks can do a calculation for you and show you, if you pay an additional 1,000 Rand a month, or even 500 Rand a month goes towards the capital. So you're reducing the capital value and you are reducing the interest value as well. So it is possible, but you have to work out that balance and calculate the balance with the bank.
So I suppose, Veloshni, the more one pays more than the required installment, it's
Yes.
actually an advantage. You're helping yourself because you're starting to pay towards the capital. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying. And so once you pay off that capital, remember that, let's say you pay 500 Rand additional, you're no longer being charged that 500 Rand, the interest on 500 Rand at whatever rate it is. Let's say it's 10%, which is around prime. You're no longer paying that 50 Rand a month on that 500 Rand over 20 years. And that's why it's called compound interest, because it's compounded on a monthly basis. So as you delete the capital, as you reduce the capital, your interest amount decreases as well.
So Nonhlanhla, there you have it. The more you pay, the better it is. So actually to your own advantage. And maybe you could pay your bond quicker in less than 20 years. I hope we've answered your question, Nonhlanhla. We've got again Veloshni Zipho Dlambewu. He's asking, is it a good idea to take some money from your retirement fund to take care of the debt?
It depends how close you are to retirement. I would say that, if you are close to retirement, then yes, of course, because your retirement funds and the money that you get from your retirement funds will then go towards the debt. So if you are close to retirement, then it's obviously the best solution is to get rid of all of the debts. If you are already retired, you should have hardly any debts, right? Hopefully your bond is paid off. Hopefully you have a car that's freehold, and hopefully your children have all been educated and they now helping you towards your retirement, as we know. So that's what I would say. But if you are obviously young, then you're probably not considering retirement, and there's no need to pay off the debt, because you can use your income that you are earning to pay off that debt.
Tell me now, on the note of taking your retirement fund, what if, like, we're in a global pandemic, a lot of people at this point in time have lost their jobs. So
Yes.
if maybe I'm just expanding on Zippo's question. So what will happen if now I've lost my job? I'm a 35-year-old or 40-year-old lady, just lost my job, and I've got debt. Is it an okay thing to take my retirement fund or rather, whatever other savings that I have, to pay off my debt?
I think it would depend. If you're 35 or 40 years old, there's a good possibility that you're still going to do something to earn income. It might not be immediate. It might take you 6 months. So you might have to cover yourself for 6 months, for example. It might take you a year. It might take 2 years, for example. So, you've got to find that balance, Ginger, because once you use the money to pay off your debt, perhaps the better idea would be to take it and invest, some of the money into a business of some sort. It could be small business. It could be, baking and selling from home, which people are doing a lot of. There's lots of companies or individuals now selling clothing, for example. Perhaps it would be a better idea to utilize that to generate more income, and use that income then to pay off the debts. And it would depend on what your passion is and what your likes and are in this situation, because surely you would want to do something to generate income for the next while.
Okay. Buswamini is saying there, this is just a comment. She's giving a comment to the statement issue that we spoke about, the bank statement. She's saying, I thought that was a problem of the older generation, that of not watching the bank statements. No, no, no. It's a problem across across age groups. It's not just old people who have that situation. So do you
Yes.
there's a viewer's question again, and she wants to remain anonymous. She's asking, do you think we are saving money by having a medical aid? Do medical aids help us in saving money, or is it just a waste of time? I should just not have a medical aid.
Medical aids are important. And we're talking about insurance in total, your home insurance, your car insurance, your medical insurance. They are important in the event that something drastic happens. So you would have that cover in place. We all know that medical aids cost an arm and a leg in South Africa these days.
Mm.
The medical aids, some of them do come with a savings portion as well. So the less you utilize, the more is removed from your day-to-day benefits and put into your savings account. So of course, at the end of the year, you have the savings which grow as well if you're not spending too much on medical aid. It's not wise not to have car insurance. I mean, I think you've seen the ads. I think it's outsurance, where people go crashing into each other. So it's not wise to not have car insurance or medical insurance, especially in the day and age in which we live in. We know, corona is a virus, for example. If you don't have
Mm.
medical aid, would you get a bed in a hospital, for example? So I wouldn't recommend canceling medical aid. No matter how young or how old we are, we do need medical aid.
Okay. And if in a situation where one can afford hospitalization or any doctor's at the doctor's room cash, would you still advise that they take medical aid?
Medical aid covers all kinds of eventualities. There's also chronic medication, diabetes, high blood pressure, heart conditions, and so forth. So, if you can afford it, of course, and if you know that you come from a very wealthy background or wealthy family,
Yes.
and you've got money, then I don't see the need for the medical aid, but that you'll have to weigh it in terms of, the possibility and what would be the full extent of any sicknesses or diseases occurring. I mean, we know the cost of hospitalization operations are very, very high. We know the cost of diseases like chronic diseases like cancer,
Mm.
chemotherapy, etc., can be quite high.
Okay. Veloshni, earlier on, we spoke about savings and investments, and a lot of people are actually, I should say, they're catching a wake up call now to say it's time to invest, it's time to save. My question to you is, are banks our best options where we can use, or that we can use, or platforms that we can use to actually invest our money? Remember, we're talking now, we want to grow our money as well. The little that we have, we
Yes.
want to grow it. Are banks the best options to use to invest our money?
So banks are usually the safest because you don't necessarily lose your capital amount. So if you invest in money markets, there's a possibility, especially with the markets currently being what they are, there's a possibility that you could lose. Your money could fluctuate, and depending on the funds in which they invested, you can lose your money. So the banks do offer money markets, but they do offer, your 24-month fixed your call accounts, your fixed accounts, etc. Those are the ones
Okay.
where you would not lose your capital. So if you invested 1,000 rand after 24 months, you're definitely getting the 1,000 rand plus the interest rates. So you'll find that they are they are less aggressive in terms of the portfolios, and they are more stable. So if you're seeking for stability, you would go to a bank. If you are more aggressive and you can afford to invest in shares. Shares are very topical at the moment. We've seen a lot of
Yes.
reduction in terms of the shares across the JSE top 40 and so forth. We know that the shares are currently at the lowest point, and it's usually healthy to buy low. And as companies improve over the next year or two, we will see the value in those shares being derived. However, when we invest in shares, we must not expect immediate returns because they are long-term investments. So
Absolutely.
in fact, Ginger, any sort of investment that you have should be a long-term investment. You should not look at it like to withdraw the money after 6 months or a year. When you save, you should save with the intention of saving at least for over a year. In the long term, that's where you'll see benefit. Shares, you will notice that shares fluctuate. They're doing this currently, up and down, up and down. So over a period of time, you'll find that they do increase. Of course, you've got to now choose the best shares, right?
Of course.
Yeah. And I also suggest a personal financial advisor, because that is the person that's going to help you, whether the advisor is at the bank or whether you select a personal financial advisor through many organizations. You will find that that person is going to help you to grow your portfolio. That also becomes important.
So is it best to also invest your monies in insurances such as your Old Mutual, your Sanlam, as compared to a bank?
What you have to compare, Ginger, is not necessarily the institution, but it's the product. There are key things that you have to consider. The term, in fact, the duration for which you can invest, the performance of that particular product. Has it been improving steadily over time? And you have to consider the interest rate that you will be getting. And whether you want a stable investment over, let's say, a 5-year period, or you're prepared to invest in a more aggressive product. So with the more aggressive products, you'll find that they do tend to fluctuate, and you may not be, you may lose a bit and you may gain a bit, but you must be prepared for those risks on the aggressive portfolios. And all the financial institutions you mentioned, like the banking sector, the insurance sector, there's a variety of smaller individual companies who are now managing these portfolios, and there's a range of products. Just to give you some insights into something else as well as to how these investment portfolios work, is the investment companies that we buy from, they use financial brokers that invest our monies on the stock exchanges. They invest it both locally and overseas on different stock exchanges, and they are called fund managers. So the fund managers will then invest our monies, which are then jointly pooled together, and that's how we get our returns over time.
Veloshani, we've got another question from Tereshana Victor. She's saying, Veloshani, I have a tax-free savings account that will mature in February 2022. If I draw some cash at my bank from there, will I be able to replace that at a later stage, or will the account no longer mature?
I think it would depend on the terms and conditions. If it matures in February, you probably won't be able to draw from something that is maturing at a later date, because that's part of the conditions, the terms and conditions. Or in insurance companies, you can, suspend the entire account, but you usually pay a fee for that. So it depends on the conditions of your tax-free saving account. And I think, Taryn, for your benefit, is if you've invested it until 2022, that's just around the corner, right? So I suggest you leave it for the next few months so that you gain the full value of the interest. If you attempt to draw some of the money out, you'll be charged fees, and you possibly will not be granted full benefit of the interest on that account. So you will ultimately lose either way. So, the long term, or Taryn's account was probably for 1 year or 2 years or 3 years, it's best to wait until maturity of the product, then you gain the full benefit.
Okay. Going back to the question of retirement, Taryn, I hope that question was answered. Please let us know if you have any other follow-up question or further questions with regards to your savings account. So, Veloshani, what I also want to understand is, we do know that the economy is quite a tricky thing, and it's ruled by obviously unforeseen factors, and especially at this time of a global pandemic. How much should those who are still privileged, who are still having some sort of income from businesses or from jobs, how much should they set aside for retirement?
Ginger, that's an awesome question. And, in my book, I have absolutely full details to show you. And I actually have a lovely example to show you how the savings portion works, right? So the financial gurus say that you should invest 10% of your income. and or 10% of your earnings, right? And let's not
Mm-hmm.
call it income, because you might have a gross income of, let's say, 1,000 rand a month, out of which you pay your medical aid, you pay your pension, you pay your UIF, etc. So you earning your net pay is around 700 rand, for example. So if you say, for example, 10% of that, that's like 70 Rand. It's going to take you a long time to build up the portfolio. And really, I'd like to encourage our viewers today to consider saving more, at least 20% or more of your net income. Okay. And I know that's a tough ask under these conditions and during the pandemic, but over time, that's what we should be conditioning ourselves to do, is to save more, invest more in ourselves, and invest more in the things that further our goals and give us value. So, for example, if we save the extra 20%, we can then buy a better property, which will ultimately result in more value for us. So 20%, I think, is a fair amount that we should be investing from our income. And you can see that, if you do your own calculations, look at how much you earn, look at your gross income versus your net income, and what the savings of 10% would look like, and what could you do with that over a period of a year or a period of 2 years, and then compare that to the 20% and see what you'd be able to do with 20%.
Okay. There's a viewer's question here. She says, I've lost a job and have a lump sum of money. How do I set my priorities straight regarding the payment of debts that I have? Where do I begin? I think, Veloshni, we've spoken about this a small ball effect. I think
Yes.
maybe you can just elaborate on the question or answer it by telling us the tools that we can use to do our budgeting.
Okay, so firstly, you would need to go download the tool from my website.
Okay.
I have a budgeting tool which is available online at my website for free. There are no costs that you will have to pay. All you need to do is register, and you'll be able to download the tool.
So what's your website?
My website is a Money Smart Book dash. Sorry, let me get that right. moneysmartbook.com.
Okay. moneysmartbook.com.
Yes.
All right.
moneysmartbook.com, or you can just Google me, and you will find the book associated. I mean, this is what the book looks like, right? So it's moneysmartbook.com, and you will be able to...
Maybe briefly tell us about the actual tool. What happens there? How do we use it? Just briefly.
Okay, so in the tool, I've detailed all of the expenses, the possible expenses, and you can download it, you can manipulate it, you can remove expenses that you don't have, include expenses that you do have, and it's in an Excel format, so it will be able to add and calculate and show you your expenses, show you your income, and show you what you're left with at the end of every month. So for the question that you had that related to how do you sort out your debt, take the lump sum money, look at your debts. You would then list all of your debts, and you would see which debts you need to pay off first, which are the smaller ones or the bigger ones. So that would be based on choice. As mentioned, if you are going to get another job, hopefully you can pay the monthly installment until the job comes along, instead of now, putting all of your money towards debt necessarily, because what happens thereafter, it's quite saddening, where you pay off debt, Ginger, and the universe doesn't necessarily work with you if you don't have any value in yourself. So if you've paid off the debt, and the individual that asked the questions, if you've paid off the debt and you have some savings, that's fine, because then you still have some value in yourself. So, or you've got a house that's fully paid off, you've still got some value in yourself. And, the universe now will work with you to increase that value as well.
Okay. All right. We've got another viewer's questions where they say, how can I include unexpected expenses into my budget? Is there such a thing as unexpected expenses? Let's just start there.
Let's start there. Look, we know we have a house, and we know all of the costs associated with the house. We've got our security, we've got our maintenance, we've got our utilities, we've got our gardening, etc. So all of those costs must be included in the budget. What are the unexpected expenses in a home? the garage door, for example, is not working. You need to replace a window, for example, because it got broken by a ball, for example. Those are the unexpected ones. So they're not necessarily going to be the larger expenses. Appliances in a home, you basically your old appliances, your new appliances. New appliances all have a warranty, so please use your warranty for any breakdowns in the newer appliances. On the old appliances, you have to budget for that. So that kind of you build up your budget and save that money until you are then able to buy the appliance. So what is unexpected in terms of a home? You can put aside, an additional amount, 300-400 rand, for example, for those unforeseen expenses, which, you cannot think of at the top of your head. Very similarly with a car, we know we've got fuel, we've got toll fees. People tend to leave out toll fees. They tend to leave out things like parking, for
Yes,
example,
yes.
and those are all, motor vehicle expenses. So
Mm.
fuel is one thing. Servicing is another big expense that we spend on our vehicles. So a tip: when you buy a car, try and buy it with a service and maintenance plan. Usually, that will be included in the price of your vehicle, instead of you having to outlay servicing for like a period of 3 years or 5 years. So it's already included, and your services, then you don't have to outlay additional money. Of course, if there's something over and above the servicing, that will be an unforeseen expense. Motor vehicle accidents are covered by insurance. Save a bit of money for the excesses, because we are liable for the excesses. And usually we don't get it back, regardless of which driver was at fault. We usually do not recover the excesses.
Okay. Our last question for the evening. This viewer says, I'm currently on credit bureau, but I have a stable income and job. Is it possible to buy a house for myself? People want to buy houses, but they don't want to pay their debts. How is that possible? Maybe you can answer that for us, Viloshni.
So your credit rating is a score, and I think we've all seen the advert with the little turtle, the total score advert, with the famous actors in there, and they
Yes.
speak about the score. So that is a credit score. When you apply for any credit, that score will be pulled up and looked at by the financial institution. There is no way from getting around that. If you have been blacklisted, you normally have to pay your debt up, and you can then apply to have your name removed from the blacklisting, from that particular organization, so they remove it off the credit reports. But you cannot apply for credit if you have been blacklisted. Usually, there are some second-tier companies, Ginger, and I'd like the viewers to know that you have some second-tier companies that will offer you bonds, even if you are blacklisted. Be very careful and check those interest rates, because usually those interest rates are higher than 20%. So, a bond is payable over 20 years. If you have a high interest rate of like 20%, whether it's for a bond or for a car, you will be paying a lot more to that second tier organization. The other thing that you could do is go into, obviously, debt rehabilitation and debt consolidation. But whilst you are, that's for a period of 5 years, whilst you are in debt rehabilitation, you cannot purchase any item on credit as well. But what it teaches you is it teaches you how to manage your debts going further. And after the 5 year period, yes, yes. So after the 5 year period, you can purchase.
Okay. Talking about debt consolidation, now we find that people on the ground are basically saying debt consolidation is not the way to go. What is your view?
It's not a healthy way. It's not healthy. There are 4 key aspects, and I speak about that in my book. And one of them is financial well-being. So we've got our health, which is our physical health. We've got our mental health. We've got our social health, and one of them is
Emotional
is
health.
our emotional health, and then the financial health. So
Mm.
it's not financially healthy from that perspective. There are challenges to be posed, when you go into debt consolidation. Yes, it's great because you pay one set fee to the debt consolidation company. All of your interest portions fall away, and you're not liable to a multitude of service providers for debt. Okay, but during the 5 year period, you cannot purchase anything on credit. You will not be given any credit. Thereafter, after the 5 years, it's a slow process, it's a gradual process because there's a rehabilitation process built into that, very similarly to like alcohol abuse or drug abuse. So the rehabilitation process is that you can purchase items slowly, so it's at an incline, and that establishes a rehabilitation process for you so that you do not end up in debt rehabilitation further. And Ginger, if you think about it, if you lose 5 years of your ability to purchase and ability to grow, do you recover? Can one recover from 5 years of not expanding as an individual financially? That's the question that you have to ask yourself.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you so much, Veloshni, for coming through. Can you just tell our viewers where can they find you? You're an author of Money Smart. It talks about being financially savvy, financial
Yes.
wellness. Please do grab the book. It's an easy read. It's quite accommodating, so you will learn a lot. But where can our viewers get hold of you should they need any further assistance with regards to financial help?
Sure. So the website it's actually money-smartbook.com. That is the actual URL, money-smartbook, one word.com. So you can contact me on via my website. I am on Instagram. You can follow me, Veloshni Naidu again. Money Smart on Facebook. I've got obviously the book profile on Facebook as well as my personal profile on Facebook. So I'm on all the social media platforms. You can contact me. You can send me a message on Messenger. Happy to talk to you on Messenger, on Facebook, or an Instagram message as well. So all of those platforms actually work very, very well. And I will respond to that. When you purchase the book, of course, there is an email as well for the book, but let's chat on social media platforms because I'm much more active on the social media platforms. That would be the easiest and the quickest way to chat to me. But please purchase a book as well. And Ginger, just for the viewers, I will be scheduling courses going forward where users can or viewers can then attend a course, and it's a small fee to pay to actually get.
How much more?
It's 500 Rand for 2 hours, and within the 2 hours, I will teach you about your personal Money Smart finance, and you would get a free copy of the book as well. So the free book will be free, and all of the details will be available on my website soon. I think 500 Rand to invest in your personal finance is really not. It's very, very reasonable. For all the insights that you will gain from this book, it is very, very reasonable. If you prefer, you can buy a copy of the book. The book sells in hard copy for 350 Rand. The Kindle version and the ebook are much cheaper on my website as well. So you're welcome to get the book and go through it. There's really pearls of wisdom in this book. And I wrote it for us, for people like us, to uplift ourselves and to become financially stable in a world where we know very little about finance.
All right. Thank you so much, Veloshni, for having come and grace us with your presence and your expertise tonight. I'm sure, ladies and gentlemen, you've learned a lot about money. It's important to look after your money like you look after your health, like you look after yourself. You know what you're going to have for supper. You know what you're going to have next to you. Already have done your groceries. That's how much you should know about your money and what happens with your money. And let's discipline ourselves. The global pandemic has taught us that anything can happen. So save, invest. Do not waste your time. Thank you so much for coming through. We truly appreciate it, Veloshni, and our viewers. My name is Ginger, the founder of Ginger the Voice. We are a communications company and we seek to give hope, courage, and enlightenment. We do this through various platforms such as speaking, singing, and hosting talk shows. Tonight was great. Thank you so much for coming through. May God bless you. Till next time, goodbye.
Lovely. Thank you, viewers.